Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi will chair the Gaza Peace Summit tomorrow, with 20 world leaders attending, including UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, Italy's Giorgia Meloni and Spain's Pedro Sanchez. This is a high-stakes meeting. Hamas, meanwhile, will skip the formal signing of the peace deal. A senior Hamas official has confirmed that the hostage releases will commence tomorrow morning. Hamas has warned that it will repel any renewed aggression. Meanwhile, over 500,000 Palestinians have returned to Gaza City since the ceasefire has been in effect. Iran has rejected US President Donald Trump's suggestion that it may normalize ties with Israel, calling it wishful thinking. Trump had earlier hinted at Iran possibly joining the Abraham Accords following Israel's peace deals with 4 Muslim-majority nations. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged US President Donald Trump to broker peace in Ukraine, praising his efforts in the Middle East to chalk out the ceasefire plan. Zelensky has called on Trump to pressurize Russia into entering negotiations after attacks have escalated and Russia knocked out power across Ukraine. China has accused the United States of double standards after Washington threatened new tariffs. Beijing's Commerce Ministry has urged the United States to correct what it has called erroneous practices, defending its decision to impose special port fees on US-linked vessels as a necessary countermeasure. Taliban forces have launched armed reprisals against Pakistani troops along Afghanistan's eastern border after Islamabad allegedly conducted airstrikes on Afghan soil. Pakistani officials have in fact confirmed that Pakistan fired light and then heavy artillery at 4 points along the border and shot down 3 Afghan quadcopters. The Trump administration has directed the use of $8 billion in unused research funds to pay troops during the federal shutdown. Trump has ordered U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to ensure that military personnel receive salaries on the 15th of October amidst the ongoing shutdown. Torrential rains in Mexico have killed at least 41 people and have caused widespread destruction. Flooding, landslides and collapsed roads have impacted 31 states. Hidalgo and Puebla have suffered the worst, with thousands affected. Meanwhile, the Mexican military has deployed troops, boats and helicopters to assist rescue efforts and distribute aid in isolated communities. All right, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has stated that Israeli hostages held in Gaza are coming home as a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas enters its second day. Now, speaking at a rally in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square, Witkoff has addressed thousands gathered, telling the families of the captives that their courage had moved the world. Listen in to his comments.
Your courage has moved this world, I say to the families. You have prayed through endless nights and never let the world forget who your loved ones are. And in this way, you honor and you bless them. Your endurance, your faith, your will to live have been symbols of the human spirit that cannot ever be broken. And now, as you return to the embrace of your families and your nation, know that all of Israel and the entire world stands ready to welcome you home with open arms and endless love.
He was joined by fellow senior advisor to the U.S. President, Jared Kushner, who praised Israel's resilience through what he called a traumatic and unthinkable experience. Meanwhile, Witkoff and Kushner have visited the Gaza Strip as well as preparations continue for the release of the hostages, both living and deceased, under the terms of the new peace deal, as well as increased humanitarian aid that is being sent to Gaza. We do know that the Rafah crossing is slated to open very, very soon. Hundreds of aid trucks are already queued outside, just waiting to deliver the aid to the Palestinian people who are now finally heading home. With us on the broadcast is Dr. Wael Awad. He's a Middle East affairs expert joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Two very important leaders in the Trump administration, advisors, in fact, Witkoff and Kushner, they visited Israel, they visited the Gaza Strip as well. There's a crucial summit that is slated to take place tomorrow, which will be co-chaired by Trump and President el-Sisi of Egypt. Now, in this context, we're also seeing aid trucks being lined up at the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing. But what else is really needed by the people of Gaza urgently? Because several of them are heading home, but their homes have been completely obliterated, destroyed. Medical facilities are not available because hospitals too have been bombarded.
I think that's what you have already stated in your comment. It is perfectly right that the people of the Gaza required food, they required medicine, they required shelters, they required all the basics of a humanities that they should be able to at least have a kind of relaxations on their, even in the open air. But because of the current Israeli embargo and banning any entry of any material into the Gaza Strip, still the suffering of the Palestinians continue. If we could see what the UN agencies have been saying, that they will be needing a minimum of 600 convoys of trucks that should be entering Gaza daily to meet the requirement of the people. Remember, there are 2.3 million Palestinians besieged in Gaza, and for the last 2 years they have been subjected to all kind of famine and humiliation. So I think these are the basic where they required, and most of the hospitals destroyed. There is no way that they can be taken. So the makeshift hospitals, emergency hospitals should be allowed the paramedicals to enter into Gaza to make sure that they will be able to treat the injured, because we know all this, that this war have left behind more than 67,000 people have been killed, more than 182,000 people have been injured, families have been totally obliterated. So there will be requirement also for heavy machinery to search under the rubble for the remaining one of those family lost their loved one.
Indeed. And speaking of the meeting that is slated to take place tomorrow, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will be present. Several European leaders will also be there, including Keir Starmer, Macron, Pedro Sanchez of Spain, who's been a vociferous critic of Israel, as well as Giorgia Meloni. What are your expectations from this crucial Gaza Peace Summit slated to take place in Egypt?
Well, I think it's a very important summit, despite the fact that this is a very fragile ceasefire. But what President Trump of the United States is trying to sell his own peace plan, that he was the only president in this world who made the Israelis succumb to his pressure and brought them to the table and halted all their genocide against the Palestinians. So therefore, gathering those top leaders, he wanted to sell this agreement. He wanted to have a permanent ceasefire in that region, and he wanted to make sure that Israel's normalized relation with maximum number of Arab countries. However, what we are understanding that Mr. Prime Minister Netanyahu having a B plan, it may sabotage all the effort by the United States in case he break the ceasefire and he go back that the Hamas did not fulfill the terms of the Israelis. So therefore, I think there are lots of pressure. We are expecting that some sort of a positive result should come. But however, we are very pessimistic, being people of this region, that we have not seen any, continuous commitment or adherence to the commitment Israelis made throughout the years.
All right, sir, requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other very crucial developments from the Middle East. Meanwhile, in the West Bank, families are waiting anxiously as prisoner releases begin under the landmark ceasefire agreement. This, of course, marks the first tangible sign of calm after months of war. Scenes of anticipation are unfolding in towns and refugee camps where relatives are hanging flags, preparing food and gathering outside homes to welcome their loved ones. Local communities say that these reunions symbolize more than just personal relief. They represent a fragile step towards healing after years of conflict and loss. Let's in fact listen in to what some of them have had to say.
احنا بالراكبة بنستنى على الأخبار، بنستنى يعني بنشوف بنقول ها شو بقولوا شو بصير شو يعني، والحمد لله أجل خير إن شاء الله. دي فرحة فيش بعدها فرحة، الحمد لله يعني فرحنا الحمد لله. إن شاء الله يا رب يتم هالفرحة يا رب، ويروحوا علينا سالمين وغانمين يا الله، يفرجها على جميع الناس المتضايقة تحتك يا رب.
ضيع عني ماني عارف، وإن شاء الله بروحوا هن، إن شاء الله بروحوا هن. الواحد بشوفهم إن بل يطلعوا برا ما بقدر أروح أشوفهم، لا أنا ولا من، أنا مش قادرين نمشي. هي بتمشي على الوكر وأنا جري وسبتني جلطة، شايف كيف؟ ومش قادر والله، ما أنا قادر.
الحمد لله رب العالمين. والله هاي أحلى فرحة إن الواحد يحتضن أبوه ويروح من بعد عمر، يعني كان عمري 9 سنوات يوم ما أسر، وطبعا الزيارات كانت مقطوعة، يعني إلي بحوالي 8 سنوات ما شفته، فيش زيارات ما فيش إشي، لأن كانوا يتحكموا بالتساريح إن ما يعطونا تساريح. وإن شاء الله الحمد لله رب العالمين هذه الفرحة، والله يعم السلام يا رب على الجميع.
More news coming in from the Middle East. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has dismissed US President Donald Trump's suggestion of normalizing ties with Israel, calling it wishful thinking. This comes as Trump had earlier suggested that Iran could join the Abraham Accords, a peace agreement signed during Trump's first term under which Israel normalized diplomatic relations with 4 Muslim-majority nations. Meanwhile, Araghchi has also stated that Russia relayed a message from Israel that it is looking looking for a new war with Iran. Listen in to what Araghchi has had to say.
طرح ابراهیم از اون جهت که حالا با یک نام مقدس آمیخته شده، ولی بنیان این طرح یک طرح خائنانه هست برای محروم کردن مردم فلسطین از حقوق خودشون و شناسایی یک رژیم جعلی و اشغالگر و عادی سازی روابط با یک رژیم اشغالگر و جنایتکار و نسل‌کش و کودک‌کش. هیچ به هر حال جرمی نمونده که این رژیم انجام نداده باشه. هر صفتی در این جهت برازندش هست. موضع جمهوری اسلامی ایران از ابتدا کاملا روشن بوده و روشن هم هست. این اصلا تناسبی با آرمان‌های ما نداره و هیچ وقت اتفاق نخواهد افتاد. که روزها گفتن رو بله. ظاهراً 3 شب پیش 4 شب پیش یک تماس تلفنی بین نتانیاهو و آقای پوتین بوده. صبح روز بعدش سفیر ما رو دعوت کردن به ریاست جمهوری و همین مطالب رو گفتن از طرف آقای نتانیاهو که ایشون تاکید کرده بوده که قصد جنگ مجدد با ایران رو نداره و قصد درگیری مجدد رو نداره.
Still with us on the broadcast is Dr. Wael Awad. Interesting statement coming in from Donald Trump. He's, of course, commented on the Abraham Accords and now stating that Iran could also be a party to it. But if we are aware of the geopolitics of the region, it's very obvious that the Iranian regime, which has recently slammed Israel as well over its commitment to the ceasefire, would not agree to this, and it's obviously come out and stated that it's wishful thinking. Yet despite all of this, do you think Trump coming out and making these big claims is just to feed into the optics of him being a deal maker, a peacemaker?
Well, exactly. I don't think he understands the history of the region very well. He is not well acquainted with the development since 1948, where the division of Palestine took place, and 55% of the original Palestine, was given to the minority Jews, while the Arabs, Palestinians, were giving 45% of it, and they never had a state of the Palestinian. Currently, what we are talking about is 7.5% of all the remaining of Palestine that have Israel have totally conquered and occupied. So I think we are more worried about the actual plan after this ceasefire. What is the exact plan going to happen? What is next after Gaza? I think after Gaza is West Bank, where the Israeli wanted to totally or partially annex the West Bank where all the Palestinians living. So let's see what will happen to the 5.5 million Palestinians living inside Israel and Palestine. What Israel going to do? So therefore, nobody can buy the American as a peace broker, by the way. I mean, the deal between the America and Israel is gone since Herzl, the American president, 1900 and 917, where the Israelis were subjugated into all kind of the Jews in Europe. They were expelled and they were sent into the Palestine and into United States. And 1948, the Herzl have vote to support an Israeli state. So now we could see that the continuous war on Gaza and West Bank is nothing but with the blessing of the United States. So we can't give him a clean sheet that America is serious about peace in the region. America is difficult. You know that nobody is understanding the actual situation here. Let me explain it to you. Israel does not want it to be integrated into the region. Means they don't want it to have a good neighborhood, because the good neighborhood does not solve or does not satisfy the right wing in Israel who believe in the greater Israel. So therefore, they wanted to be part of the region, yes, but as a dominant force. As a dominant force, they can expand at the coast of Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq, because that's what they call the greater Israel. So now, to speak of peace according to your president's plan, I think it's a joke. It's more of a rhetoric, it's more of a show in front of the cameras, in front of the world. But if you wanted to have peace, implement the UN Security Council, end occupation, end settlement, give the Palestinian right of existence side by side with the Israelis. Then we can have peace in the Middle East.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we shift our focus away from the Middle East towards Europe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged US President Donald Trump to broker peace in Ukraine, just as he has done so in the Middle East. This was expressed during a phone call where Zelensky emphasized that if Trump could stop one war, others could be stopped as well. Now, this call has come after Russia launched a large-scale attack on Ukraine's energy grid, knocking out power to parts of the capital Kiev and 9 other Ukrainian regions. Meanwhile, the Russian airstrikes on the church in Kostyantynivka region of Ukraine has left 2 people dead and 4 injured. With that, viewers, we shift our focus to yet another important development. China has strongly responded to US President Donald Trump's latest trade threats, calling them a typical example of double standards. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce has criticized the United States for increasing economic pressure since September and has warned that imposing high tariffs is not the correct way to engage with China. Beijing has defended its recent export controls on rare earth minerals, which are vital for electronics and military equipment. The ministry has stressed that these measures are necessary, carefully managed, and not a ban. Civilian use applications that meet regulations will be approved. It has urged the United States to correct what it has termed erroneous practices and has warned that if Washington continues down this path, China will take further measures to protect its rights and interests. The ministry has reaffirmed China's consistent position that it does not want a trade war but is not afraid to fight if necessary. This comes after Donald Trump has threatened to place an additional 100% tariff on Chinese imports from the 1st of November. This is over and above the 30% tariff already in place. Trump has also threatened to cancel a planned meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the upcoming Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in South Korea. With us on the broadcast is Andrew K.P. Leung. He's a strategist tracking the economy and politics in China, joining us from Cairo in Egypt. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. The world's largest economy is once again in an all-out trade war with the world's second largest economy. In your assessment, if this continues, how will it impact global markets?
First of all, it's not just the economies. It is a global rivalry for dominance and influence between the world's largest superpowers, the United States and China. And then the tariff war is only part of Donald Trump's grand strategy to defeat China on multiple fronts, weaponizing American strength in the dollar, the US dollar, the world's largest economy, and technology,
ideology, and also allies. So it's a 360 degrees weaponization against the rise of China, of which the tariff war and the latest imposition of 100% tariffs on China in response to China's rare earth dominance is only part of the picture. Now let's look at the tariffs, because the tariffs are imposed not only on China but on Americans' allies, left, right, and center. But its main target, of course, is China's rise. In addition to tariffs, the United States has recently imposed huge shipping charges, targeting any ship made in China, not even carrying China's flag. And provided the ship is made in China, it will be subject to huge shipping tariffs when those ships call on American ports. This is again a strategy to strangle the China shipping industry, which of course is over 100 times more ships produced in China every year than the United States. 100 times. China is producing 1,000, and Americans barely producing 100. So I think that this all affects not only the economy, but also the growth of the U.S. Navy. So, and China's response recently is predicated on its newfound strength in rare earths, because these rare earths are used in all sorts of products, ranging from high technology, mobile phones, and green energy cars, but most of all in the military. As much as 78% of Americans' military requires these rare earths. Yes. So China's weaponizing that as well in response, and not only in control over its export, but also the export of this intellectual property over the rare earths developed over many years in China, because nobody wanted these processes. They're very, very dirty, highly complicated, and highly interconnected in so many different fields, and no other countries has got this supply and value chain ecosystem. So over the years, China has now mastered the production processes and now weaponizing them as a counterweight against China, against the United States. So I think China, unlike many other countries, is so confident of its trump card that it's not going to yield its economic trajectory, its development rights to President Trump's coercion. Now, let's not forget, it's a meeting with President Xi is concerned. Let's not forget who was asking for it in the first place. It was President Trump, who wanted to meet Xi just to showcase another way that he's going to manage the world's order dynamics. But now, he's suddenly woken up to the fact that China is now blowing back. It's blowing back against this grand strategy of the huge shipping charges, of tariffs, of technological coercion, because China is now relying on its own inbuilt technology. Look at the DeepSeek, for example, in AI.
And of course, even the space technology, China has successfully built its international space station right from the start. So I think that China is not unlikely to yield, and we're seeing the two countries are now confronting each other head to head. If there's no meeting with President Xi, I don't think that the presidency is too worried about it. Of course, China's economy is hit, but on the other hand, it's now pivoting to the global south. If you look at the latest statistics, China's in fact the overall export has been growing, largely due to the expansion of its trade, export, and supply chains pivoting to the global south, which of course also suffering from Trump's no-holds-barred tariffs.
Yes.
So you can see that the dynamics are playing out, and it's not just the economy, it's a rivalry between two superpowers for global influence.
Indeed, and you've of course addressed the Chinese economy. I wanted to also bring in the US economy, because right now we're seeing Trump's tariff policies playing out, along with the fact that the US government has shut down. It's the 12th day of the shutdown, in fact. The experts are warning that what we are witnessing in the United States is a double whammy. Prices are rising due to the tariffs, and recession is also taking place. Then could we expect the Federal Reserve to reduce the interest rates in order to mitigate what could be an adverse impact?
Well, of course, the inflation is rising gradually, because in the beginning, when a tariff war was waged, the trickle-down effect was not that apparent. But over time, a lot of the costs of the tariffs are passed on to the consumers, even though the importers are absorbing a bit, the exporters in China are absorbing a bit, but not in entirety. So the trickle-down effect is now being to have an impact. Inflation is rising, but even before inflation is rising, President Trump wants the interest rates to go down. It's putting a lot of pressure on the Fed, despite its independence. So that because with low interest rates, the American economy can grow faster. And then, of course, it makes cheaper for big businesses. But on the other hand, the inflation is rising, then you can't have the two at the same time, a low interest rate and a low inflation. So I think that this is a dichotomy. But as far as the exclusion of all China's products are concerned, it's virtually impossible. Because China's now, over the years, owing to decades of outsourcing from the United States and other Western countries, China is now the biggest manufacturer and producer and trader in the world by par excellence. And if you go to any supermarket in the United States or around the world, the vast majority of the products are made in China, or have China components, supply chain, logistics embedded in them. And then how can you exclude everything? I mean, you just can't find enough substitutes, even though some of the products are made in other countries, but they still rely on import of materials and components and also logistics from China, including 7 of the top 11 container ports. So I think that there's a great deal of rhetoric there. I don't think that this the meeting between President Xi and President Trump may or may not take place. But I think that the tussle is going to continue. But you can see that a lot of the dynamics are loaded against the United States, because the whole industrial base has been hollowed out in the United States owing to decades of outsourcing. They don't have the ecology, manufacturing ecology. Most of the products are no longer made in the United States, plus the fact that the costs are a huge cost differential, and over to a cost and quality. Increasingly, China's products are not only cheap, but they are of high quality, as evident in the electric vehicle industry. But I don't think that President Trump would like to yield. But on the other hand, he could scale down, he could still dial down some of the rhetoric against China in due course, knowing that China is not going to yield. And then we're going to see the TACO, T-A-C-O, Trump always chickens out phenomenon once again. Whether this is effective remains to be seen in the coming weeks or months.
All right, sir. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World, sharing your analysis on what we can expect as far as the trade war between US and China is concerned. Meanwhile, viewers, we're tracking more updates. US President Donald Trump has designated Sergio Gore as the new American ambassador to India. Now, during his first visit to New Delhi, Gore met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the two discussed trade, defense technology and the growing importance of critical minerals to both nations. Gore also met Indian Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Gore has described Trump and Modi as great personal friends, while Modi has stated that he was confident that Gore's tenure would further strengthen the India-US comprehensive global strategic partnership. Listen in to what the US ambassador designate has had to say.
It's an honor and a privilege to be here today. I arrived from Washington to New Delhi early this morning, and we hit the ground running. We had a great series of meetings, including with Foreign Secretary Ministry, with the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, and with the National Security Advisor, Doval. And we just finished an incredible meeting with Prime Minister Modi, where we discussed bilateral issues, including defense, trade, technology. We also discussed the importance of critical minerals and the importance of that to both of our nations. The U.S. values its relationship with India, and under the strong leadership of President Donald J. Trump and Prime Minister Modi, I'm optimistic about the days ahead for both of our nations.
This appointment comes as Washington imposes steep tariffs amounting to 50% on most Indian exports, impacting key sectors such as textiles, jewelry and seafood. All right, viewers, due to paucity of time, this is all we have for this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.